Hey guys, this is Drax, and yesterday I went to see Solo, a Star Wars story for the first time. So I want to give you my thoughts on this movie in a video. In the first part of the video, I'll be keeping it spoiler free with my review score, and then after that I'll move into the spoiler zone, so I'll tell you when we get to that part. Overall, I think it was a good Star Wars movie, nothing too mind-blowing though, or exciting to say of, except for the one part which would have shocked me had I not already seen spoilers. I would sum Solo up as an entertaining film with a few surprises. It's got a steady pace to it with great character development, and I think it works well as a good fill-in on the stories we've already heard so much of. Take the Kessel Run and Millennium Falcon ownership for example. Han Solo, I'm glad to say, is played well. I personally didn't like the actor choice when I first saw Alden Ehrenreich, but he does a good job and manages to capture glimpses of the Han we all know and love. Lando, played by Donald Glover, puts on the best performance for me as he captures Lando in such a way that it really feels like the same man with a younger flair. What I really loved in this movie was the relationship building between Chewie and Han. I thought that was captured very well. And I also think Emilia Clarke played Qi'ra rather well. Since this was a new character, she had more free reign on it, and I always think she delivers a solid performance with her roles. Dryden Voss is played by Paul Bettany, and he is a decent bad guy. You learn his traits early on in the film, and you grow quickly to dislike him. So that's always a good sign when they are the bad guy, as you are meant to dislike them. And Beckett, played by Woody Harrelson, is sort of a mentor to Han, one of the more interesting characters in this film for me, so I enjoyed his parts in this. There really isn't any mind-blowing scenes in the film. It's pretty much all as we expect. You know, Han's gonna live, Chewie's gonna live, and Lando's gonna live. So really it's just a backstory told very well with a few surprises along the way. Saying that, I found it a good watch, so I'd give it 7 out of 10. Because of certain scenes. It's close to a 6 really on my list, but I think definitely worth a watch for yourself just to get to know the backstory of Han a bit more and explain little bits in between. With that said, I now want to go deeper into the other part, so now's the part where I go into all the spoilers, and for all of you that haven't seen the film, I'd advise going away and coming back when you have. Or if you just don't care, you can carry on watching as well. So I'm going to start here with the coaxium, otherwise known as hyperfuel. This extremely valuable substance buys Han's freedom from Corellia at the beginning of the film, and it's pretty much what the whole film is about. It's so valuable it seems like everyone is after it. It's funny that in this film we see so much emphasis put on the coaxium, whereas other Star Wars films you don't really hear it mentioned that much, so it's unusual to see how valuable it is, and this gives us a grasp of how valuable this hyperfuel is in this film. Sadly, Qi'ra, Han's young love interest, has freedom snatched away from her as she tries to accompany Han through the gate out of Corellia when they have that coaxium. From this moment on, we get to see what kind of man Han is, as he does everything after this point to try and get back to Corellia and free her. We of course learn that Han from an early age is a troublemaker, but a good driver, and after joining the Empire and then being kicked out, he's also a great pilot. He saves Chewie from capture, and that's the start of their bond. They actually send Han into his death pretty much, and that's when they start working together. They both go on to join a crew with Beckett as their leader, and now Beckett seems like a good man and becomes in a way a mentor to Han, as said before, with similar goals at the start. And I like the way that Beckett offers advice with the words, "Trust no one," and in the end makes good on those words, even though he seems like an ally and a good guy throughout. He compares himself to Qi'ra in saying that they're both survivors, doing whatever it takes to survive. Han, on the other hand, is the actual good guy throughout, doing what is best for the people he loves and the ones wronged by the Crimson Dawn. And the Crimson Dawn is the most interesting thing in this film for me, as this is in line with the Clone Wars animated series, and so are a few other things mentioned, such as Aurra Sing the bounty hunter, who is said to be killed by Beckett, I believe. An interesting thing to find out. But getting back to this Crimson Dawn organisation, I heard the leaks about Maul being in this film, and this one thing made me more excited to see it than anything else. If I tell you the truth, this was my favourite moment in the film, Maul igniting his double-bladed Inquisitor lightsaber when talking to Qi'ra, who evidently serves him. With Dryden Voss dead, she seemingly takes the opportunity to move up the ranks, and we get to see Darth Maul again, heavily aged with cybernetic legs. He looks crazier than ever, hellbent on domination and revenge, with the Duel of the Fates playing in the background. What a scene that was. And I would guess a shocker for many of you watching if it wasn't spoiled before. Now, Crimson Dawn, led by Maul, seems to be a branch off or changeover from the Shadow Collective, a group Maul led to help him take over Mandalore. And Maul's rule over Mandalore was indeed short-lived. Pretty sure Palpatine brings an end to that rather quickly. But he still seems to hold some power here from his homeworld of Dathomir, as he mentions it to Qi'ra when he summons her there. Crimson Dawn would ultimately be his last leadership position, but in his time he would do many barbaric things as outlined by Enfys Nest, like cutting out the tongues of everyone who opposed him on a certain planet that he had repeatedly taken from. Apparently they said no, so he cut out their tongues. We can see how he ruled over people with fear, and that comes across in Dryden Voss, the villain who mirrors this same attitude, killing anyone who fails him. Dryden's face has many marks going down it, and I have to wonder if Maul might be the one who gave him those. Well, let's get back to Enfys Nest, who turns out to be a rebel, trying to help people and free them from oppression. In this case, it's the Crimson Dawn, but many things hold true to the rebellion. Coming into this movie, many of us expected Enfys Nest to be the bad guy, but surprisingly she turns out to be just a young girl trying to help in the same way that her mother did. She seeks a coaxium to help bring freedom instead of wanting it for personal gain. A character we quickly grow to like, and we see Han showing signs of being that good guy we all know, helping her out. Sadly, we don't get much more info on Enfys Nest, but she does seem like a good starting point in the rebellion. Maybe we might see more of her in other Star Wars films. Qi'ra, played by Emilia Clarke, starts out as Han's first love, a young girl alongside Han on the planet Corellia, trying to escape poverty and slavery. After failing to get out with Han, we don't see her again up until the two reunite on Dryden's yacht. At this point, she is Dryden's lieutenant and a great fighter, ultimately killing Dryden to possibly protect Han, but I think in the main way it seemed to me that she wanted to climb the ladder within the Crimson Dawn organisation. The fact that she doesn't go with Han in the end is a bit confusing to me, as she takes Dryden's yacht and begins her trip to Dathomir. We obviously don't know what happens to her after that point, probably gets choked by Maul, I would guess. But in truth, I would really like to see her die in this one, maybe at the same time as Dryden when fighting him, or they could have even had Maul show up in person and kill her. That would have been even better. Instead, she just flies away, so I think they missed out something there that could have made this film a lot better. Talking more about certain scenes, we'll start here with that train heist. A good action scene with a few close calls and two characters eliminated early on from the crew. Now, Rio Durant, the Ardenian, is one of those to be killed here, and I really liked his character as he was quite funny, so we're sorry to see him killed off so early on. Tandy's character Val I wasn't so keen on, so I didn't mind her sacrifice to help the job. But sadly they don't succeed in this part, and all that effort and sacrifice is just wasted thanks to the interference of Enfys Nest. My favourite part here being when they drop the coaxium and it blows up, showing the power of this substance. Great visuals in the movie there. Since they didn't get the coaxium off the train, a new crew was formed alongside Qi'ra and Lando this time, and they travelled to Kessel Mines to steal unrefined coaxium with the intention of refining it elsewhere. And I quite enjoyed this part, even with that crazy female droid known as L3. She frees the droids and helps the crew to get out, and on her way out, whilst continuously shouting about equal rights, she takes a critical hit and ends up being part of the Falcon. Funnily enough, she seems to be a sort of companion to Lando, his co-pilot, and in her mind, his love interest. I'm not really sure what was that about. It was a bit weird and a bit over the top for a droid in some ways, but I guess you could say an interesting character in other ways. Lando seems to share his unusual affection for her and is pretty upset after, but happier when she becomes part of the ship. So I'm not really sure what's going on there between Lando and this droid, but it's like a weird lover story. That whole scene is a little bit uneventful for me, up until the point when they actually try leaving. With such a rare, expensive resource being stored there, it seems like it wasn't protected very well. Still, we do get to see the whole team show off some of their skills, and Chewie saving a few of his people from slavery. A good part, but in some ways uneventful, and too much about that droid. The Kessel Run was also another good scene, but once again, a little uneventful for my liking. For all the talk about this legendary Kessel Run in the other films, I felt a little underwhelmed by this part. Now, I'm not calling it bad, the effects were great, the Star Destroyer blocking them, the giant wormhole sucking them in, and of course that massive tentacle creature. That was all good stuff there. I just felt like more should have gone on the journey. As for the Millennium Falcon, in this part we get to see how it goes from a nice looking freighter at the beginning with Lando as the owner to the rusty looking one we know from the original films, as it goes through a fair amount just in this movie. We also get to see the front of the ship being removed when Han launches the escape pod into the wormhole to trick the creature, so that question also got answered in this one. That part did turn out to be an escape pod as expected. Han seems to have all the answers in this scene and showing he knows exactly what to do in a dire situation. In some ways he felt smarter in this film than his older character, but maybe we can just put that down to age. I just felt like this part in the film, the Kessel Run, didn't last long enough, but I guess that might be why he got there in less distance. 12 parsecs, as we've repeatedly heard throughout the Star Wars movies, because he used that shortcut. That would also explain why it took less time in the film. Also, since we are talking about the Falcon a bit, let's focus on how Han came to own it. The two Sabacc games Han and Lando play against each other. Han proves he is a great Sabacc player, both times technically being the winner, but since Lando cheated the first time, Han realises this for the second time, removes Lando's extra card from that holder up his sleeve, and by the time Lando feels for it in the final round, it's too late and Han wins the Falcon fair and square. It's great to see this in the film, as we could only imagine it before, and now we know how it actually went down. So Lando, yeah, he proves to be a cheat both times, staying true to that early character. I love the way his character was portrayed by Donald Glover here, mimicking Billy in many ways to keep it close to the originals with a younger feel. He had that aura about him, confident, sneaky, and good with the ladies. He was definitely the star of this film. I could of course keep talking about little things like this, but I don't want to go on too long, so I'll say I enjoyed the film. Yes, it could have been better in some ways, but nothing really matters too much in this one as we knew the outcome, and that meant there wasn't much tension. I also want to say that I missed the Force users. I honestly miss seeing any Force powers or lightsaber duels in this one, as they are what I love the most about Star Wars. Like Vader ripping through the rebels in that end scene in the Rogue One film, I also feel that Solo could have done with this too, but in this case it should have been a Maul massacre. Still, Darth Maul on that hologram at the end was my favourite part, linking everything we've seen in the Clone Wars series into the main films. Worst part was probably the female robot Lando relationship talk. It just felt unnecessary, it didn't really build on Han's character or the backstory, but I get it was meant as comedy. Still, I enjoyed most of the stuff in between, and I have to say it was a good Star Wars film and did the Han Solo character justice. A 7 out of 10 I think is a fair score for this one, but I have to say if Maul didn't show up, it would be a 6. So guys, that's my thoughts on Solo. Please let me know yours in the comments. What did you like the most about it, and what was your least favourite thing? As always, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Let me give you some advice. Assume everyone will betray you, and you will never be disappointed.
I got a really good feeling about this.